Welcome to the Reimagining Ourselves podcast, where we spend time dreaming of what we could heal and what we could become. I'm Cassandra. I'm a life coach and therapist, and I come to you with a decade of experience working in the mental health field and a lifetime of experience learning how to process and grow from pain and trauma. Today I'm here to talk to you about how hierarchy has disrupted the masculine-feminine balance. A social construct is something that only exists because it is agreed upon by humans. We have constructed the necessity of manners, the value of money, and the power of the government. Our collective imaginations are powerful, and we create real impacts in the world as a result of these shared beliefs. Hierarchy is a social construct that came into our culture along with colonization. The entire strategy of colonization, arriving to a land and valuing your group above others, is based in hierarchy. The theoretical framework of hierarchy is underlying racism, sexism, and every other instance of devaluing another individual or group of people. Many of our social ailments, violence in schools, war, are all heavily impacted by this delusion of hierarchy. Now, if you think back to episode 4, where we discussed the difference between masculine and feminine energy, you might recognize that hierarchy is a masculine concept that has kind of gone wildly out of alignment. The premise beneath it is that some people are more important than others, and you can see how that masculine way of breaking things down into variables and trying to reason your way through them could lend itself to this sort of value system. And I think it's important to stop and explain that this is what people are really talking about when they reference patriarchy. It's the fact that some of these ways of thinking that are traditionally more masculine have been overemphasized in our culture in a way that is making us all sick and damaged. It's not just about gender and how each gender is treated within this system, but more so the fact that the entire feminine way of thinking has been removed from our society on a large scale. We have seen and lived within a collective undervaluing of the feminine. And again, this is so problematic for all of us because the feminine energy brings things that are crucial for the functioning of a tribe or community. Things that are crucial for both men and women, like emotional support and a sense of belonging. The targeted removal of these values has drastically increased depression, isolation, fear, and violence in our societies. As Sherri Mitchell says, the subjugation and oppression of the divine feminine is directly connected to every threat to life that we face today. This way of thinking is further exploited in advertising with implied comparisons and thinly concealed messages that we are not important enough, attractive enough, young enough, financially secure enough, etc. without a specific product. This imbalance between the energies drives our hyper-productive hustle culture that pushes our bodies and minds past our limits for profit. It has encouraged both men and women to become more egotistical and individualistic as each person competes for social and financial capital. And in fact, the entire overemphasis of profit over spirit and connection that we see today can only exist in an ecosystem of this imbalance. So allow me to explain just a little more about how this cultural experience of removing the feminine really hurts regular men, women, and children. I feel like we need look no further than the high suicide rates among white males to understand that there is something wrong in our culture for all of us. And I think it can all be linked back to this dream of hierarchy on every level. So men who are told that they should not experience weakness or mental challenges and are intentionally antagonized through media about not being wealthy or powerful enough. Then, at least in the US, they are released into a country where everything is stacked against them as far as getting that financial capital. And we see how those who are connected to that feminine energy, whether within themselves or someone in their lives that they respect and value, are somewhat protected from that kind of distress. They're able to know that the money is not the most important thing as long as your basic needs are met. The energy of family, meditation, stillness, and community are so protective over this kind of mental angst that we see creating really angry and unhappy men. For women, of course, we're taught from our earliest conception of social norms that the feminine traits that often come more naturally for us are less valuable. They're embarrassing, a sign of weakness, something that will ensure that you won't be taken seriously in the world. At the extremes, those of us who have experienced sexual assault have also learned that we are not safe as females in the world. And of course, there are many different forms of assault, but this is such a big cultural message that women receive, that many of us are culturally forced into adopting that masculine energy in order to survive the workforce, to be taken seriously, and sometimes, on some level, even in hopes of avoiding a violent attack. But perhaps the worst part to me is how the loss of feminine energy affects children. Children are being brought up in such a harsh world where they are left alone with their enormous emotions and energies, and it's turning into mental illness, especially where this form of unintentional emotional neglect is combined with an overdependence on technology to occupy their time. Because their parents are exhausted from the way we've set up our society, as I just explained. They may be stressed and burned out and unable to find that balance. So we are going to talk about the good, bad, and ugly of both masculine and feminine energy. Definitely stick around if you're interested in that, because both of these energies can become out of balance on an individual or community level with disastrous results. There is such thing as healthy patriarchy, it just isn't what we're seeing right now. Matriarchal communities often do well because the feminine way of being and emphasis on connection and spirit create a solid foundation on which to build. But as I'm sure you can imagine, an ideal community or society would have strong influences of both. A wonderful balance between being and doing. And I do want to bring some hope into this conversation because I see so much change happening and a reawakening of the feminine in ways that are very healing for everyone. We do see people seeking balance. Something that COVID helped us realize that, wait a minute, maybe we don't want to spend our entire lives slaves to capitalism. A lot of that looks like people unconsciously working to balance the masculine and feminine again. Families in which fathers are able to be involved in their children's lives. Shows like Bluey where the dad gets to engage in the caretaking. And government ads for fatherhood. We see meditation and energetic practices on the rise in certain areas, and people starting to wake up to their internal experience. And with so many different perspectives available to us on the internet, we're able to see through some of the illusions of media and misinformation more clearly. Hierarchy is something that we as a collective have to accept and perpetuate. This is an energy that has been gaining momentum in one direction for a while, and it's not an easy illusion to break, but it's up to those of us who can see the flaws in it to reimagine our world. So allow me to offer an alternative perspective that I hope we can grow and evolve towards. Let us consider the gifts that we have to offer one another in this world. Let us imagine being in circle with others rather than being above or below them. There are no gifts without diversity, and the things that make us different are where we have something unique to offer one another. Let us envision this balance of masculine and feminine energy and see the value in one another's ways of being. If you enjoyed this conversation, please give the video a thumbs up. It helps me know what kind of topics you're interested in. Hit the subscribe button to stick around and let me know your thoughts on this and any other ways that you see hierarchy hurting our society. Welcome to the good side of the internet, and I'll meet you here next time on Reimagining Ourselves. The Reimagining Ourselves podcast is a passion project of mine, and 100% of the proceeds from this podcast are put directly into the hands of people working for environmental restoration, indigenous reclamation, and urban gardening.